Did Mahatma Gandhi do enough to save Bhagat Singh?
You've always looked at it from the perspective of the Mahatma, that I'm not going to a path of violence, I believe in non-violence. Or we've looked at it from the perspective of the historians who say that this was not the Mahatma's battle to fight. But this is the first time where we've got revolutionaries speaking about how they went and knocked on the Mahatma's door, saying that if there's anybody who can go around it, it is you. And I think the biggest thing that comes out is that nobody speaks about is that the very act of hanging is a violent act. And for someone who believed so staunchly in non-violence, to allow this violent act to happen is the big irony.
There's always one person, one movie, one story that's trying to tell you, look this side, there's something that you really ought to know but you don't. Here comes in a book which many booksellers, many bookstores have a pressure not to sell too much because it speaks about a chapter of history that has been very comfortably concealed from the public. Here comes in the story of the voice for pre-independent India and continue to be a voice for India. Tell me the story of Prattab.
So Prattab is very, very close to my heart because it is the story of not just a newspaper, but also its editors. To quickly give you a brief on it, Prattab was an Urdu newspaper launched in 1919 in Lahore at a time where there was, the whole independence, which way should we be taking the independence struggle question was amidst all the people. It was launched by my great-grandfather, so it's a family newspaper, and he launched it as an evening paper just about, I think, 12 days before the Jallianwala Bagh massacre. It sold out the very first day. And the British hated it because my great-grandfather was somebody who didn't mince words. And I'm going to take his quote here, which is relevant even today, because he said, as an editor and a newspaper or a journalist is not a vendor. We're not here to sell the news. If we were here to sell the news, we would be selling vegetables. I am here to speak truth to power, and that is our job. If you can't do it, don't be here. And he stuck to that. He was extremely uncompromising. I think at some point too uncompromising, if there is such a thing. And so it was him and my grandfather, who was 17 actually, decided that first, this is a family newspaper, but he'd rather just go straight into the freedom struggle the right way. So he joined the Revolutionary Club, and he became a part of the HRA, which is Chandrasekhar Azad's organization. And so he went to jail. By the time he was 22, he had been in jail 9 times under the British. They hated him. And every time he would come out, my great-grandfather would say, for how many days are you out this time? He cleared his BA in jail. He cleared his MA in jail. In fact, it's a fascinating story because even for his BA, my grandfather gave up hope that it's not going to happen. And my great-grandfather, Maharshi Krishan, said that no son of mine is not going to be a graduate. And he went to the British and said, you are going to get this done. And so my grandfather would be ferried every morning in a special bus to this makeshift. It was just like an exam center for him. And one guy would walk in every day and sit right next to him, breathe into him while he was writing his exams. But he writes, he said that one fine day was a good man. He came and said, if you want to see anything, please go ahead. Oh. But he cleared his BA and his MA, and he continued to fight for India's independence. Later on, in the 1942, he joined the Congress. He was very close to Nehru. And he won from a seat which is now in Pakistan. After independence, the newspaper shifted from there to the other side of Punjab, which is in Jalandhar. And it was Urdu, but in the 1950s, a Hindi newspaper was also started. Then came the emergency. And because by that time, my grandfather was running it, and he had also the same mantra as my great-grandfather: we are not going to bow down. The truth is truth, and truth is sacrosanct. And they tried to shut it down. They knocked. It was censored. So my grandfather stopped writing the editorials. So it went with blank pages. In fact, it was the first newspaper, not the Indian Express, not the Hindustan Times, where the knock came, as we call it, the midnight knock, and to say please. So it went with blank pages. And my grandfather, for a year and a half, did not write an editorial. He said, I have not compromised to the British. I'm not compromising today. After that, it hit them financially. It was going to. It was the only newspaper in Punjab with 13 other newspapers not writing an editorial. Then came militancy in Punjab. And that kind of, I think, was a big nail. The newspaper was targeted. It was on the hit list of the terrorists for being very vociferous in its stance against militancy. And in 1983, a bomb blast took place in the office. A parcel bomb was sent to my grandfather, and my dad tried to open it. The stuff would come to him, the mail would come to him, and it was sealed. And he tried to open it and he couldn't. So he called the peon and he said, could you just open this? My dad was busy. And the peon tried to open it and he said, the nails have been hammered it really hard. I can't. So I'll just take it to the other room. In 10 seconds, there was a blast and 2 people died and a third person was seriously injured. And I think that was a very, very big hit to them. Yet they continued, defiantly so, hence the name. And I think a lot of people would have liked them to leave Punjab, but my grandfather said, I'm not scared. I made bombs in pre-independent India. This doesn't scare me. I have left my home once. I'm not going to leave my home. So this is where they stood. And, then commercialization, corporatization, liberalization, the world had opened up, and militancy hit them because there was a diktat by the terrorists that no advertisement should go to the Hindi press. And that's where it got hit because all the money, the government caved in and the money would just go to the Punjabi press and to the one Tribune. Or Tribune also not that much, only to the Punjabi press, which at that time was also publishing even prayer ceremonies of terrorists. It was that compromised. It had a long journey.
It's an amazing thing that a family became the voice for a group of people, a community, a city, a state, was literally tarnished, pushed to the corner, threatened, bombed as well, but stood its ground so firmly. In this book, there are some amazing chapters of icons of India's freedom movement, Bhagat Singh and many, many more. Run me through few chapters that maybe will not be there in our official books, but these are instances of a personal experience, a personal connect that only the book Pratap will have.
So I think when we begin with the whole colonial part, we begin with Punjab actually, so 2 chapters, we begin from there and then we go back in time. We've all heard about the Saunders Case in our history books and the mistaken killing of all of that. What nobody knows is actually Bhagat Singh fled Lahore after shooting Saunders, but my grandfather was arrested. So that was his first arrest, was for the Saunders case, because they said you were involved and you are own up. So my grandfather was coincidentally in jail, Lahore Central Jail, the same day that Bhagat Singh was hanged. They had known each other. I think they were first introduced during the Simon Commission. Again, that's something we all know about, when the Simon Commission came to Lahore and everybody marched to the where Lala Lajpat Rai was lathi charged. So at that march, my grandfather was first introduced to Bhagat Singh, and that's how they walked, they talked, and that's how they got to know. And so they were both doing their various journeys, and my grandfather, in and out, landed up to be in Lahore at the same time as Bhagat Singh. And when this whole news came that he's going to be hanged on the 24th of March, on the 23rd, there was a barber who used to go to my grandfather and to Bhagat Singh. Bhagat Singh by that time had started growing his hair again. He had chopped it off, is the images that we see, but in jail again it was the same. But he started going to the other guys, Rajguru and Sukhdev. So he came and the barber said that, Sardar Saab is saying it's all done, time is up. And so that's how people actually thought it's going to be the 24th. They preponed it by a day because they didn't want people to know outside. But my grandfather said that he told the barber that could you go to him and ask him to send us a memento. So Bhagat Singh actually took out a comb and carved his name on it and sent it. And my grandfather got the comb and he had another guy with him who got the pen. And that night, when Bhagat Singh came out of the jail, it's a huge Lahore jail, I mean, from what I can, after reading it. And as soon as they came out, the three of them said, Inqilab Zindabad. And then slowly each cell started singing Inqilab Zindabad. So apparently the whole jail was just echoing with it. And then they walked out and there was silence. And nobody slept in that jail that night. And the next morning, when the jailer came to my grandfather, he was howling. And my grandfather said, what happened? You are the only one who can tell us, because nobody had slept and everybody wanted to, know if it had really happened. And he said, I've seen many brave men, but I've never seen a man like him. Because when he was going towards, the gallows, I told him that, why don't you pray? It's your last time. He was an atheist, but he belonged to the Sikh religion, and as was the jailer. Jailer was also a Sikh gentleman, Chattar Singh. And Bhagat Singh turned around and said, I have never prayed in my life. And in fact, sometimes, I've even kind of said bad things about God, that, that there's so much of poverty and there's so much of poor people. And so if I turn around and I pray to him now, what is he going to think of me? And saying that, he walked off. And we do not have men like that anymore. So that was the one that continues when we were writing it. Goosebumps. I've known the story. Goosebumps. I say it. Goosebumps.
And when I hear it, goosebumps as well, ma'am.
But when it's my grandfather's account.
Yeah. That's a unique account. But there's a question that very rarely we find answers for, and maybe this book will give us a perspective or an answer. Did Mahatma Gandhi do enough to save Bhagat Singh? People have different views on this. Were they together? Were they on the same page? Or were they looking in different directions? Pratap has the story. Pratap has the reality. What's the truth?
We've actually questioned if the Mahatma erred in not doing enough when it comes to Bhagat Singh. And, ironically, both Bhagat Singh and Mahatma Gandhi, the pedestal is a little bit shaky in contemporary India at the moment. And yet they kind of hold on, because Mahatma has this whole global reach and Bhagat Singh has this reach with the youth and the oppressed. But this book, Pratap, A Defined Newspaper, is actually the book that kind of looks at it from the perspective, I think for the first time, of the revolutionaries. You've always looked at it from the perspective of the Mahatma, that I'm not going to, these guys are on a path of violence. I believe in non-violence. Or we've looked at it from the perspective of the historians who say, rightly so I guess, that this was not the Mahatma's battle to fight. But this is the first time where we've got revolutionaries speaking about how they went and knocked on the Mahatma's door, saying that, you are the only one who can save. We know that there's the Irwin Pact. But if you could go around it, if there's anybody who can go around it, it is you. And, you have to sometimes look at the sentiments of the country. And we also question whether he overlooked the sentiments of the country. And I think the biggest thing that comes out is that nobody speaks about is that the very act of hanging is a non-violent act. And for someone who is a violent act. It's a violent act.
Is a violent act.
And for someone who believed so staunchly in non-violence, to allow this violent act to happen is the big irony. And so we've actually questioned whether the Mahatma could have done more. And yes.
So you state, this is a chapter that is quite interesting. Revolutionaries went and knocked on the door of Mahatma Gandhi and said, step in here, the voice of the people says something else. Can you please intervene for the sake of these heroes? What was his reply? Ignorance, no, false promises.
So there was a very famous lady revolutionary, popularly known as Durga Bhabhi. So he told her that, look, they believed in violence. And that was not the path, so I cannot save them. And at the end of the day, there was doom and gloom from what my grandfather remembers immediately after the hanging. And I think he was shown black flags. I think there was a Karachi session of the Congress immediately afterwards. And he was shown black flags. And yet I think, so I think there was the Mahatma, the revolutionaries went to him, which is not something that comes out, and he said no.
Could Mahatma Gandhi have actually saved or stopped the hanging if he wanted to?
See, this is where the historians say that it was the life of these three people versus the life of, hundreds of other political or non-political prisoners who were then released as per the Irvin Pact. But these three people, what everybody overlooks is that their contention of the revolutionaries was very simple. Firstly, the violence was not violence. It was ideologically based action, right? I mean, they were not violent people, as you know. They're not mugging people or lynching people. They were not even trained. They just had what we call a junoon for freedom. Secondly, their whole thing was that if we go on this path, what will happen? If the British does not like our path, it will by default take them on the path of the Gandhi. So either which ways, and they always said that we revere the the Mahatma ourselves. So if the British are angry with us, if the people are angry with us, they will go with the Mahatma. It's a win-win either way, but they lost.
Yeah. You thought it was either this way or that way. You didn't realize that you'll be out of the game immediately. That's an interesting perspective. Also, your grandfather was very, very well connected with Pandit Nehru as well. Can you run us through some experiences that maybe the books don't have, but Prattab the book has?
So I think the first time my grandfather was, oh no, it was before that actually, because he was, a little bit involved with the newspaper, and this was after Nehru's wife had passed away. One of the correspondents came to my grandfather Virendra and said that, there are rumors that Nehru is getting remarried. And my grandfather said, really? And the guy said, this is a scoop. We have to run. Pratap has to run. Now, Pratap was like such a big newspaper that things didn't move. Everybody believed everything that was written in Pratap, and that's the difference. My grandfather said, I cannot run it without confirming it. So he sent a telegram to Nehru saying, reports suggest you are remarrying, please confirm. And the reply came, fantastic nonsense. And who is your reporter? Now, my grandfather couldn't give the name. So I remember he said when I met him at, he'd come to Lahore, and we had to go on campaigning, and his first thing was, who was the reporter? And he said, I kept changing the name. He kept wanting to know, but he said I did not give the name. But just my grandfather was dispatched to go off to Allahabad to ask Nehru to come and campaign, because he was such a big name that, and Congress wasn't doing great in Punjab, to come and to campaign. And Nehru said, look, it cannot be done. It's a lost cause. And my grandfather, being a journalist or coming from that family, learned to stay put, So he said, look, I'm not going. So then Nehru said, okay, there's a way. I've looked at my schedule. I can come for 2 days, but only if you get me an aeroplane for campaigning. My grandfather said, done. He never thought how, what. He just needed Nehru to come.
Because that time it was not a common thing to get an aeroplane for
nobody had done it. So this was the first time. So then they came back, and my grandfather said, we have to get a plane. And so they did manage to get a plane. This was the first time any politician had gotten a plane, and Nehru was a people's person. Yeah. So they flew to Sialkot, and those times Indians were not allowed into airports, right? So that entire airport was still chock-a-block with Britishers, because they had heard about Nehru, and he was such a big name. They had only come to see him. And so when they flew back from Sialkot to Lahore, he called my grandfather, and he said, look, we're flying over, where all are we going? And so there's a place called Mori Gate or something, which is still in Lahore. He said, we're going to fly over this gate. And so he told my grandfather that, okay, now I want to go over, because I want to see who are the people who've come. And, can I just look, maybe throw some flowers down? So, immediately my grandfather had to go sit with the pilot. This is how it was done. In 5 minutes, the route was changed, and he flew over his campaign, sites. And he was fantastic. He'd come once. It's a really funny story. My grandfather, he had gone to Kashmir, but he was not allowed to enter Kashmir. He was kind of deported, so to speak, and he had to go back to Allahabad. He would go back via Lahore. Now, Lahore had this whole thing that if you wanted to have a big gathering, political gathering, you had to take permission from the Britishers. Nobody had time. He was there literally for a night, so he said, so it was decided that he would go out in a car, and they needed a convertible car. My grandfather had a convertible car. Now, the only thing was my grandfather had just learned how to drive. So he wasn't the most comfortable driver, and he couldn't tell Nehru that, because Nehru had decided we are going. So, and because we're in just 2 people, it's not a procession, but people will come out. So there's my grandfather driving. This star world is sitting next to him. People have lined up the roads. They are throwing garlands, flowers. So they're So at some point, my grandfather couldn't see properly because, he was so nervous कि accident ना हो जाए. But so he took Nehru, and then another time Nehru said, listen, take me out for a drive. And at night they went and parked outside a canal, and he came out and he said, everything is so peaceful and calm, and I wish, my life has become so different, but I miss these moments where I can be nobody. And, another moment where his wife had passed and they were crossing to a house and it was full of lights, and I think he said it's Baisakhi, and I got married on Baisakhi, and he got really pregnant. So he shared a lot. We had a lot of letters from him, personal letters that he sent to my grandfather speaking about his wife's illness, and a fantastic postcard from Gandhi. All of those photos are in this book. So there's a lot of history.
There's a unique history of the history we know so much, which is amazing. Jyotsna, why did Pratap close? When today any corporate could have bought this over, anyone could have funded you in this time where ventures are being funded, grown, investments, all that's coming in. You've closed Pratap. A chapter of India's voice and history has been closed. Was that the only way out? Was finance, business the only reason? Was it that people lost interest in the truth and the voice of the common man? Was it that we need to see glitz, glamour and amazing sets? What went wrong and why is Pratap shut today?
The glitz and glamour is the big thing. And I think my family was strictly, at least my great-grandfather, my grandfather said, no sleaze ever. There was a story, and you will not believe it, an senior editor at Hindu sent me this story, and he was in Delhi those days, and he said, look, my father would give me money to go and buy Pratap. And so I went to get, and he said apparently the story was that an ad was sent to Pratap, and there was an actress with her legs showing, and Pratap refused to carry the ad. So ad would first go to Pratap, okay? And Pratap said, I'm sorry, we're not going to carry that story. And so it was sent to Milap, and immediately Milap carried it and all of that. But the next day, they had, in their own version of Photoshop, photoshopped the legs and still sent the ad to Pratap saying, can you please carry it? Then it was carried. So I guess, I think maybe they were just so into journalism for journalism's sake that the outside forces took over, and I think commercialization, I don't think they would ever have allowed themselves to be bought by a corporate house. And looking at where we are today, I think my father says, just as well, because I would have shut it down myself because of the kind of challenges, he said if we hadn't shut down, we would have been shut down. Yeah. Politically, we would.
Because there is no space for truth.
There is no, So people were it still had a very loyal readership, but the forces of nature.
Would you like to bring it back?
It's a question we've been asked many times, and I keep telling my father, maybe we should think about opening it up digitally, in the digital format. I think it's going to take a lot, but then we have the name. And we have the patented name.
And it's going to give a lot, ma'am. It's going to give people what they need. It's going to save people from misinformation, noise, and the news that needs to be delivered will probably be coming from this. Maybe it's the right time for Pratap to come out. The digital avatar of it could be a great idea. Finally, ma'am, last question to you as we divert into the other aspects. But tell me, Pratap, the book is out. It's in the stores. It's doing very well. Reviews are very positive. Why should every Indian who cares about their country, who wants a better future and understanding of the history, pick up a copy of Pratap?
Because it is, firstly, truth for truth's sake. Secondly, in an environment where history is being distorted, this is first-person account. There is no scope for being distorted. Thirdly, there are just so many interesting snippets from a history that we would all love to know. We've all read our history books, but there's just so much here that you want to know. And fourthly, and very importantly, the feedback that we have received ourselves from so many people, former journalists, former editors who have written to us saying thank you for writing this, because this is how journalism was meant to be, and this is why we got into the profession. So if nothing else, to understand what the profession is and what it should deliver, because as people we deserve better, and I think this book will tell you why.
Fantastic. Congratulations on the success of another book of yours written by Jyotsna. I would love to end the show. I have to because you have a lot to do. But who would be a better person to end the show? You've done some amazing endings. It's time for us to end the news. So I'm going to allow you to end this show, ma'am. You can do it by banging on the table and saying what the nation wants to know, or you can do it in your own way. But I'm going to allow you, Madam Jyotsna Mohan, to end this show, your style, the best brand of journalism that we know of.
Gosh. And that's it for now from me, Jyotsna Mohan. I'm signing off for the day. Rajiv will be back again with a fresh episode with more conversations. Stay tuned.
Fantastic. I got this one for free. Thank you, Jyotsna. It was a pleasure having you on Chennai Live. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. This was wonderful, Rajiv.
This is Chennai Live, Radio Redefined.